We're going to wrap up Revelation 17 today, picking up with verse 15. We're told, then the angel said to me, the waters you saw where the prostitute sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. The beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God has put into their hearts to accomplish his purpose by agreeing to hand over to the beast their royal authority until God's words are fulfilled. The woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. I think it's Alistair Begg who said the plain things are the main things, and the main things are the plain things. I just don't know how many plain things there are in the book of Revelation. Even in a case like we have in our text where the interpreting angel tells John plainly enough in verse 15 that the many waters first referenced in 17 verse 1 are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. I, for one, am thankful for the angelic interpretation. I don't think I or you would have intuitively grasped that the waters were people. Granted, in Isaiah 17, the prophet says, woe to the many nations that rage. They rage like the raging sea. And then the peoples roar like the roar of surging waters. But I didn't know that until I looked it up. Now, I think I initially suggested that this phrase about sitting on the waters alluded to Psalm 137 and Babylon not seated on people, but literally by a river. It just goes to show how thickly layered Revelation is with prophetic discourse. John's vision isn't just layered with prophetic discourse. The vision itself is kaleidoscopic. That is, the visions quickly morphs, retaining continuity, but also taking on different shape, color, and meaning. Consider the example. The harlot is first described in verse 1 as seated on the waters. But then very quickly in verse 3, she was no longer seated on the waters, is she? She's seated upon the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. We assume it's from the beast that for a time she derived power and influence. Despite her seductions, her power is not to last. She is destroyed by the very kings who indulged and intoxicated themselves with her adulterous ways. The description of her demise is graphic and almost offensive, combining the allusions to the uncovering of Israel's shame in Ezekiel, the death of Jezebel in 2 Kings, and the torching of a city. Yet these kings, as we discussed last time, were not out to seek power for themselves. What they acquired was ever so quickly surrendered over to the beast. So the question is not just what does it mean, but why is it important? And I think this is where it's plain. In verse 18, we read where the angel said, the woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. Did that not strike you? It was intended to. In Revelation 1:5, John refers to Jesus calling him the faithful witness, the firstborn from the dead, and the ruler of the kings of the earth. Do you see the problem? Why did God put it in the king's hearts to accomplish his purpose? As we're told in verse 17, and orchestrate the kings handing their authority to the beast, because this city had set itself in opposition to the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And for that it received judgment through the beast. The beast is going to do the same, and for that it will be judged and destroyed, for the sake of the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And in that, the plain message of Revelation, we can take comfort. Have a blessed week.